24. Those 24 are reported to have come into contact with nearly 1,400 people. The novel coronavirus continues to spread worldwide, with China reporting at least 636 deaths and more than 31,000 confirmed cases. The victims include a Chinese doctor who was one of the first to warn the SARS-like outbreak in December. And South Korean automakers Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors are temporarily shutting their production lines in the country as they struggle to import components from suppliers in China due to the ongoing outbreak. It's 4 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Kim Mo-kyun. Let's start with the latest on the coronavirus outbreak. South Korea has confirmed one more case today. And for the latest, we have our Ji-young on the line for us. Ji-young, tell us more about the latest case.
Mo-kyun, like you said, South Korea confirmed one more coronavirus case today, bringing the total to 24. Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said on Friday that these 24 confirmed cases have come into contact with 1,386 people. The agency also said that the 24th case was one of the Korean evacuees who returned to South Korea from Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak. The patient, a 28-year-old male, tested positive on Thursday afternoon and was moved to the National Medical Center that evening. This is the second case among the evacuees who flew in from Wuhan. The patient was checked several times after coming back to South Korea, and all tests came up negative until he showed mild symptoms on Tuesday. The evacuees have been under a 14-day isolation since arriving back from Wuhan last Friday. They are staying in public facilities in Asan City and Jincheon County. Both locations are about a 2-hour drive from Seoul. This latest case comes after the Central Accident Prevention Division confirmed 4 more cases on Thursday. 3 cases were Korean nationals who are either family members or have had close contact with other confirmed patients. They all had been in voluntary quarantine before being diagnosed with the disease. The other case, the 23 confirmed case, was a Chinese woman who arrived in South Korea on January 23rd as a tourist. The KCDC said this woman visited Lotte department store in Myeongdong and a local supermarket in South Korea. Lotte department store Myeongdong branch will close temporarily from 2 p.m. Friday for 3 days. As the new cases were confirmed, the local TV home shopping channel GS Shop, where one of those new patients had been working, decided to go off air until Saturday morning.
Now, meanwhile, the Ministry of Education says the number of school days could be shortened because of the coronavirus outbreak.
That's right. The Ministry of Education has decided to regard coronavirus as a natural disaster. According to officials in the education field, Minister of Education Yoon Hye sent letters to 17 superintendents of education across the country, saying that the number of days in the school year could be shortened to prevent further spread of the coronavirus outbreak. The Ministry of Education said it can shorten the school year by up to 10%, and the number of days school are closed will differ depending on the situation of the region. The ministry took similar measures during the 2015 MERS outbreak. Also, as the 22nd confirmed patient was found in Naju, South Jeolla Province schools and kindergartens in Naju are considering suspension. There are about 30 kindergartens, 24 elementary schools, 15 middle schools, and 11 high schools in Naju.
Now, Ji-young, what are some of the changes we're going to see starting from today?
The government will widen the scope of those being tested for the virus. It has expanded the definition of suspected cases to include people who show respiratory symptoms or fever within 14 days of visiting anywhere in China. Also, if you haven't visited China but are concerned that you might have the novel coronavirus because you have a high fever, you can get tested from today. Officials announced the move due to a rise in the number of confirmed patients who have been to countries other than China. To be eligible to take the test, you must have a high fever, one of the symptoms of the coronavirus. People with symptoms can visit 124 public health centers, and a locally developed new test kit that only takes 6 hours to determine whether a patient is infected will also be available at 50 medical institutions across South Korea. All the tests for coronavirus are free. That's all for me. That's all from me for now. Back to you, Mogyan.
Thank you for that update, Chiang. Now, alarming numbers out of China overnight. Its death toll from the novel coronavirus hit 636 as of this morning, and more than 40 new confirmed cases were reported from the virus-hit cruise ship docked in the Japanese port of Yokohama. Our Park Hee-jun has the latest.
The death toll in China from the novel coronavirus is now at 636, with the total number of confirmed cases standing at more than 31,000. China's National Health Commission revealed the latest figures early Friday, with 73 deaths and more than 3,000 additional cases occurring in a single day. But around 1,500 patients were discharged from hospital. In Hubei province alone, there have been 618 deaths and over 22,000 confirmed cases. That's an increase of 69 deaths and 2,400 cases in one day. Among those who have died from the illness is Li Wenliang, one of the first doctors who have warned about the coronavirus. Wuhan Central Hospital said in a statement that he died early Friday. The 34-year-old had warned the public back in December of a SARS-like disease, although the Chinese government accused him of making false comments. 2 newborn babies in Wuhan are also known to have been infected. In other parts of the world, the virus has killed just 2 people outside the Chinese mainland, one in Hong Kong and one in the Philippines. Japan has reported the highest number of confirmed cases, followed by Singapore, Thailand, and South Korea. More cases are also coming in from the cruise ship docked in the Japanese port of Yokohama, put under mandatory quarantine after 10 passengers were confirmed to have the virus. 41 more passengers on board tested positive, 21 of them Japanese. That brings the total on the ship to 61. There are 3,700 passengers and crew members stuck on board, and the number of cases there is expected to rise as virus tests continue. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
The World Health Organization is going to hold a global research and innovation forum next week. There, participants are going to try to work together to come up with measures to deal with the coronavirus epidemic. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
In their latest move to fight the spread of the novel coronavirus worldwide, the World Health Organization announced on Thursday that they will convene a global research and innovation forum. The forum is scheduled for February 11th and 12th in Geneva and will be organized in collaboration with the Global Research Collaboration for Infectious Disease Preparedness. The forum will bring together leading scientists, public health agencies, ministries of health, and research funders seeking a vaccine. Among the topics to be discussed will be identifying the source of the virus, as well as sharing biological samples and genetic sequences. Experts will also build on existing research from SARS and MERS outbreaks and identify knowledge gaps and research priorities in order to rev up the development of medical products to minimize the impact of the virus. The WHO says the forum will produce a global research agenda for the new coronavirus, as well as set priorities and frameworks that can guide which projects should be undertaken first. The organization hopes the meeting will lead to the speedy development and evaluation of effective diagnostic tests, vaccines, and medicines, while creating mechanisms for affordable access to the world's most vulnerable populations. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In other news, Blue House Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Hyun-jong is reportedly in Washington to discuss the issue of individual tours to North Korea. Citing diplomatic sources, a local daily said that Kim met with a string of White House officials to discuss sanctions and inter-Korean cooperation projects. It added that defense cost sharing and ways to resume North Korea-U.S. talks were also on the table. This comes after reports that Choi Jong-gun, Secretary to the President for Peace Planning, had also visited the U.S. to discuss related matters. South Korea has been looking to get inter-Korean relations back on track amid the nuclear standoff between Pyongyang and Washington. President Moon Jae-in had also said that individual tours do not violate UN sanctions and that they could help bring North Korea back to the negotiating table. The day after the Senate vote, U.S. President Donald Trump celebrates his acquittal while slamming the Democrats who led the impeachment process. Our Yoon Jung-min has the story.
President Trump's response at the White House to Wednesday's Senate vote was this.
Did nothing wrong. I've done things wrong in my life, I will admit. Not purposely, but I've done things wrong. but this is what the end result is.
At the annual National Prayer Breakfast on Thursday, Trump also triumphantly held up copies of newspapers with acquitted headlines. He then slammed Democrats, particularly House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who was sitting only a few seats away from him. President Trump targeted lawmakers who led the impeachment campaign against him, calling them very dishonest and corrupt. He went on to claim that they had done everything possible to destroy him and hurt the nation. Trump also jabbed Senator Mitt Romney, who was the only Republican to vote to convict him. Referring to Pelosi, President Trump said he doesn't like people who say, "I pray for you," when he knows that's not so. In response to that, Pelosi said she still prays for Trump because he's so, quote, off the track.
I pray hard for him because he's so off the track of our Constitution, our values, our country. He can say whatever he wants, but I do pray for him, and I do so sincerely.
Wednesday's acquittal gives President Trump the green light to seek re-election this November. Trump is the top contender among the Republicans for the 2020 U.S. presidential elections, while nearly a dozen candidates are campaigning for the Democratic Party nomination. In the Iowa Democratic caucuses, former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Senator Bernie Sanders were neck and neck as the top two candidates. 윤정민, Arirang News.
South Korean automakers Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors are temporarily shutting their production lines across the country. This is because they're unable to get some of the important parts from China due to the spreading of the coronavirus. Our Kim Jae-hee has this report.
South Korea's biggest automaker, Hyundai Motor Group, is gradually suspending assembly lines at its domestic plants due to difficulties receiving components from the company's suppliers in China. By next Monday, almost all of Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors' production lines will be at a standstill, with the length of the suspension period depending on supply lines from China. Many companies in China are currently operating at a limited output due to the extended holiday due to the coronavirus outbreak. Amid the worsening epidemic, Hyundai Motor Group has decided to provide over $840 million to its small or mid-sized suppliers in Korea. With many automobile businesses in South Korea preparing for big losses due to the epidemic, the Finance Ministry announced support measures on Friday to minimize disruption to the country's automobile sector. Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi said the ministry will come up with mid- to long-term measures to tackle supply shortages of auto parts. He said the ministry will strengthen consultations with local Chinese governments in order to restart factories in China. He also stressed that his ministry is mobilizing all private channels, such as the South Korean embassy in China and car makers, to ensure the Chinese factories are soon up and running again. Hong said the government will work to quickly bring auto parts into the country through a 24-hour emergency import clearance system. He added the ministry will quickly grant approval if companies apply for an extension in working hours to expand domestic production. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
Now, local health authorities are revealing when and where the confirmed patients visited. And people here in Korea are checking those locations to avoid going to those places. But experts say there's no need to worry so much about going to those places as they've been already quarantined. Our Choi Jung-yoon explains.
Contact tracing is one of the hottest keywords in South Korea at the moment. It tracks the history, timeline, and the locations visited of a coronavirus patient. Amid the fast-spreading coronavirus outbreak, information such as the restaurant and hotel the confirmed patient went to, how they had arrived, which subway line or the number of the bus they took is shown. Even the seat they had sat in at the movie theater is being revealed. This is the movie theater in central Seoul where the fifth confirmed patient visited a day after arriving from Wuhan. In response, the theater closed temporarily and quarantined the area. It reopened on Monday, but still seems quite empty. In order to contain the virus from spreading, the cinema has tripled their quarantine measures by hiring fumigators. The cinema have provided hand sanitizers for customers as well. However, citizens are still not convinced.
After I heard this area was contaminated, I stopped coming. I nearly came with my mask on after the disinfection. But I'm still scared. I check the information every morning.
Contact tracing is changing people's daily lives. Citizens are checking the coronavirus locations and are avoiding going to these areas. Experts say, however, tracing information is not a list of places to avoid, but rather critical in checking the possibility of infection.
The infected areas are already quarantined, so there's no need to avoid entering these areas. The virus can only survive for a few hours, a day or two maximum. Moreover, if it's quarantined, the virus is 100% eliminated.
He also said that tracing is best used to check whether one was in the same area as a confirmed patient. If this was the case, one should watch closely for related symptoms and report to health authorities quickly should they begin to show. He added that it's important to keep track of the updated information to check the possibility of further infection. 최정윤, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news. And for that, I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's begin. So on Thursday, China announced that it will have tariffs on some $75 billion of American imports from next Friday. Following the announcement, U.S. stocks skyrocketed on Thursday. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. The retaliatory duties on some U.S. goods will be cut from the 10% to 5% and from 5% to 2.5% on others, according to the statement from the China's Ministry of Finance. The adjustment would take effect from February 14th, it said, without specifying which time zone it will be referring to, as it's announced as 1 p.m. The statement said that move was made in order to advance the healthy and stable development of China-U.S. trade. China said that the next adjustment will depend on how Sino-U.S. trade ties evolve, adding it hopes to work with Washington to completely eliminate all tariffs increases. As you said, the total amount is expected to be about $75 billion worth of goods. Clearly, this is a positive indication as the direction of the trade is moving positively. I think that this is happening because this coronavirus impact is quite negative for Chinese economy, and China needs U.S.'s help. And I think that the situation is that in terms of negotiation, in terms of trade, we think that it will move in the right direction, where the both countries will be working closely together to help out each other as continue to support the global economic growth rates.
Well, that seems to be some good news. Now let's turn to the local market. As you've said, U.S. stocks staged a massive comeback this week, recovering their losses from the coronavirus scare. Now, what do you think about the market situation here in South Korea?
Right. I think that Korean market also recovered quite nicely, but today it is falling by about 0.7% for Kospi. Kosdaq is flat. And actually, in terms of the movement of the stock prices, Kospi was one of the worst performing indices relative to other global indexes. The reason for that is because Korea's dependency on China in terms of production as well as consumption. So that is actually putting some negative dent to the performance of Korean equity market. As you said, U.S. market has recovered, and actually it is hitting the record highs. It continues to rise to show that their dependency on China seems to be relatively less. And also, they've been competing with China on the various other industries where most people are now thinking that U.S. will win this U.S.-China dispute in terms of trade. And they're competing for the next generation of fourth industrial revolution eras. And clearly, U.S. is in very good condition. So that is positive news for U.S., but in terms of whether that will have a positive impact for Korea, that really depends on how Korea changes from heavy dependency on China to probably diversify in terms of the production as well as consumption.
So we still have to wait and see. What is the status of the exchange rate and global oil prices today? How do you expect the figures to unfold in the near future?
In terms of the Korean won, it has continuously depreciated just along with the Chinese renminbi. It was as low as 1160 territories. Now it is back up to 1187.3. So it has depreciated by somewhere around 3 to 5%. Now, the reason for this kind of move is, as clearly I said, Korea's dependence on China. That actually affects negatively in terms of the currency movement. As for the oil prices, also, it really fell quite sharply from $65 territories because of the Iran incident to now as low as it went down to below $50. However, though, it seems to be stabilizing above 50, now currently trading at $51 or so. The reason for this volatility is really related to the supply and demand. China is one of the biggest buyer of oil from global producers. And if that demand goes down by 20%, obviously that will have a negative implications. So therefore, the production cut is expected, and they are coming through. OPEC is deciding on that as well. And also, because of the shale production, it can change any time by U.S. So therefore, oil price might be stabilizing at around $50 to $55 territories. All in all, we think that the currency as well as the oil price should be in a range bound, not to depreciate that much, probably not above to 1,200 level, but probably stabilize at around 1150 to 1,200 level. As for the oil prices, probably stabilize anywhere between 50 to 55.
All right, Mr. Yu, we'll have to leave it at that place for today. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and have a great weekend.
Thank you very much.
Now, this coming Sunday, the 92nd Academy Awards will honor the best films of 2019, and eyes are on whether Parasite will become the first South Korean film to take home not just the International Feature Film honor, but even the Best Picture trophy. Our culture correspondent Kan Hyung-woo tells us more.
제시카 외동딸 일리노이 시카고 과선배는 김치모 그는 이사촌.
This little melody, known as the Jessica jingle from the South Korean film Parasite, went viral on the internet late last year. This came as Bong Joon-ho's black comedy was scooping numerous awards at festivals and film critics associations around the world, including the Palme d'Or, the top prize at the Cannes Film Festival. Parasite now enters the weekend with the 92nd Academy Awards ceremony set for Sunday in Los Angeles. The film has been nominated in 6 categories: Best Picture, Best Director, Film Editing, International Feature Film, Production Design, and Original Screenplay. US media outlets predict Parasite will win the International Feature Film Oscar after it took home the Best Foreign Film at the Golden Globes in January. But they also say Bong's film could claim even more Oscars, like Best Picture, Best Director, and Original Screenplay. The Associated Press said that by winning the Best Ensemble from the Screen Actors Guild, Parasite has the most important vote in the actors who make up the largest percentage of the Film Academy that determine the winners of the Oscars. Time magazine said Bong has practically become the protagonist of this awards season for his roguish charm and effortlessly quotable soundbites. The New York Times said the Original Screenplay Award will go to what it described as twisty Parasite. Movie fans will closely be watching the ceremony to see if Parasite can become not only the first South Korean film to win an Oscar, but also the first non-English language film to win the big one, Best Picture. Kan Hyung-woo, Arirang News.
That brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.